The Royals have another bullpen weapon that could be on the way here in a few weeks, or maybe even as early as next week. We'll tell you who that is and why they should make an impact next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Or you can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, well, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. And again, those terms apply over at Game Time. The Royals don't play tonight, which is why, as I usually do, kind of wait to save our episodes to a little bit later on in the evening. I will be doing Chiefs post-game or a Red and Gold post-game show on Sports Radio 810 WHB coming up around 10 o'clock tonight. So didn't want to wait that long, but definitely a little bit later of an episode tonight because the Royals are off, and I got to make sure I am tuned in to the Chiefs' final preseason game. But as I said, when I enter with this show, this is a show about the Royals, 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball, and here I am talking Chiefs preseason football. But with them being an off day, it allowed me to, I think, look to the future even more so than tomorrow or the next series or next week or anything like that. Because when you have an off day, as the players get to do as well, you get to take in what you've done, what's ahead of you, and what you are expecting over the next month or so, really to close out the season with the final 35 games to go. But on this off day, I had the opportunity to go and do a little bit of a deep dive on Alec Marsh, who's been pitching down in Omaha, got demoted right around the trade deadline because the Royals had acquired Michael Lorenzen, and they had made a decision to put him into the fifth spot, and he has shined in that fifth spot. But the good thing for the Royals is that Alec Marsh didn't go down to AAA, lose his confidence, and now he's, an unplayable piece as the Royals are continuing to make a push toward the postseason. If we're being quite honest, the Royals got the best of both worlds. They had the best possible outcome in acquiring Michael Lorenzen. Michael Lorenzen came to Kansas City and immediately started pitching well. He had been struggling in his last couple of outings with Texas, comes over to Kansas City. His ERA is under 2 in 4 starts with the Royals. And Alec Marsh goes down to Omaha, where he's used, yes, as a starter. He's appeared in 5 games. All 5 of them have been starts, but they've been unique starts. He's on a pitch count. He's only going 4 or 5 innings. Last time out, August 20th, which was, I believe, Monday or Tuesday, he threw 5 innings and struck out 6. But his numbers overall in Omaha told me one thing and one thing specifically. He doesn't belong there. And that was what you needed to see from Alec Marsh. Whenever you have a guy that went through a bit of a rut up at the big league level, whether they be in the rotation, the bullpen, or the lineup, when they get demoted and they need a quote-unquote reset, though Alec Marsh wasn't really a reset, it was more so of, we need to try a different role. It's easier to do that in AAA than it is at the big league level. And he's proven he's not a 4A player. I think he's proven that he is a big leaguer, but the Royals now have a little bit of this secret weapon, if you will, coming in September. I believe when the rosters expand in September, Alec Marsh will be up for good. I also think there is a chance come Monday when the Royals have a doubleheader against the Guardians that Alec Marsh could be the game 2 starter or the game 1 starter if they decide to save Reagans for the nightcap on that Monday game, that Monday doubleheader. And if Alec Marsh comes back up, I could see him in a variety of roles. If the Royals starting rotation is on a little bit of fumes at that point, if they are really running into a wall at that point, they could go with a 6-man rotation. Hell, the Phillies are trying to give their starters an extra day of rest this weekend in Kansas City. It doesn't appear now that the Royals are going to see Zach Wheeler. So there's a lot of teams out there that might be looking into that 6-man rotation, and Alec Marsh starting in Omaha but not working deep into games is a unique weapon to have, because I think in a shorter sample size and a smaller workload, Alec Marsh can be one of the more valuable guys in this bullpen. I think that there is a really good path to making this unique role for Alec Marsh and having him thrive in it. The fact that we've seen a guy like Chris Bubich start to pitch in high leverage a little bit more, Sam Long being another guy like that, I think there is a cool possibility in which you could start Alec Marsh on Monday, or maybe you go to a 6-man rotation in September and Alec Marsh goes 4 innings. You turn it over to Chris Bubich for 2. Maybe you go to Schreiber for the 7th, or MacArthur for the 7th, or Sam Long, and you line it up for Lucas Erceg to throw late in the game. I know you're using more bullpen arms, but I think this unique role is kind of a short-term starter, but maybe a long reliever or maybe an opener. That flexibility gives the Royals this unique weapon, because we know Alec Marsh has good stuff. We've seen it before. We've seen him stretch it out to 6 or 7 innings. And just having that extra day of rest for Seth Lugo and Cole Reagans could be vital. And this team not only surviving the 20-game gauntlet, but being refreshed and being a little more rested up if they are to make it into the postseason. And with the state of this bullpen, guys like Chris Stratton, who are kind of limping toward the finish line, and Angel Serpa is limping toward the finish line, I think Alec Marsh could give this bullpen a little bit of a boost, especially if somebody like Hunter Harvey can't get healthy again. I mean, we've seen in a 1-inning workload before a 2-inning workload, Alec Marsh be able to run it up to 97, 98. When he was stretched out for 5, 6, 7 innings, he would sit around 93 to 94. But having that good breaking ball, having the good 12-6, having the good slurve or the sweeper, whatever you want to call it, I think that plays well in the bullpen. And having this best case scenario where Michael Lorenzen's dealing and Alec Marsh is also pitching well in Omaha, it's the perfect spot to be in, because you don't need to worry about, did I make the wrong decision, right? If Michael Lorenzen was acquired and you gave him the 5th spot and he struggled and Alec Marsh was doing what he's doing right now, well, maybe you lost a couple of games because you decided to go with Lorenzen over Marsh. That's not been the case. It was the right decision to move Alec Marsh down to Omaha, try out a different role, because now you can have the best of both worlds, with Lorenzen shining in the 5th spot and Alec Marsh maybe coming up to the bullpen and providing them a lot of value in more of a unique role. I think having that hybrid, that guy that can start a little bit, pitch in long relief, maybe go an inning or 2 if you need him to, that is absolutely vital down the stretch here. And I know that there are some fans out there, some followers that are clamoring for an Evan Sisk out of the bullpen, or maybe for Steven Cruz in that fastball. There was a few people that were excited about Carlos Hernandez and what he had shown. But I think there will be 2 additions to this roster in September. Alec Marsh could be the 27th man and the game winner, game 2 starter on Monday. But I think come September, with the roster expanding a little bit, I think Alec Marsh comes up. I think Nick Loftin comes up. That would be my prediction as things stand. But having a guy that can come in there and maybe start on a Sunday getaway day, or you just need him for 3 or 4 innings, if the bullpen was rested up because of a good start by Reagans, I think a 6-man rotation isn't the worst thing in the world. Now, right now, the Royals rotation is not struggling. Michael Lorenzen's coming off 7 shutout. Cole Reagans wasn't good on Tuesday, but he was excellent against Minnesota last time out. Seth Lugo was great last time out. And Michael Wacha goes tomorrow, and he's been maybe the Royals' most consistent arm over the last 2 months or so. But having just that type of arm in the chamber, I'm not saying Alec Marsh is a world beater. He's, the best prospect down there, but he's got big league experience. He's pitched a lot of innings for the club so far this year. And now this is more of an interesting role that I want to see how it works out, because this bullpen has a lot of up in the air type guys. What are we getting from them on a nightly basis? This, to me, gives you a little extra power. I think this is a good swing and miss candidate to have in the bullpen, and either be able to start in the 6-man rotation, be there for long relief in case somebody only gets through 4 or 5 innings, be there in a one-inning role if you are a little bit taxed in the bullpen. Having that flexibility is so good to have in a playoff push. And I believe that Alec Marsh will have a very important role in this team surviving the last 35 games of the year and getting back to the postseason. And you get to the postseason, there's a good scenario that he's very valuable out of the bullpen for a Royals team in a best-of-3 wild card series, or maybe even above that or beyond that if they are to win that wild card series. We'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, Cleveland got shut out in their series finale against the Yankees and got just one hit. Are they running out of gas, and can the Royals catch them? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to one of our newer sponsors in TonaI. They are a brand new for this week, and we're excited to work with them moving forward because for those of us who thrive on getting stuff done, including workouts, every minute counts. That's why you need TonaI, the smart strength training system that takes the guesswork out of working out so you can make sure you're making the most of every rep. When life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. And with TonaI, you can get efficient workouts personalized just for you and are available with the amount of time that you have. TonaI is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. Powered by AI, TonaI learns with every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Right now, TonaI is offering our listeners $200 off. That's a great deal for your TonaI purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's TonaI.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. That's TonaI.com using promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off. Great deal over there on TonaI. I had the chance to go around the league and watch a couple of games through the MLB app today. And one I was very focused on, of course, being an AL Central rival, was the Cleveland Guardians game against the New York Yankees. And it pains me to root for the Yankees in some scenarios, but sometimes you just have to swallow your pride, push away your bias or anything like that, and root for the betterment of your playoff position or your division position. And no matter what the Yankees do, it doesn't really matter for the Royals because where they are right now is leading the American League East. And the Royals would only play New York if they got to the next round of the postseason if things stayed the same. What could change is the AL Central. And I think what's exciting about this is the Royals are not in a position where they are barely clinging to a wild card spot and that division is out of reach. At this point, you feel good about the cushion you have in the wild card, though 3.5 is not a ton. It's a healthy lead right now. And you can turn your attention to catching Cleveland, to catching Minnesota, which you've already done. You're tied with Minnesota. However, they have the tiebreaker. For Kansas City, this has now turned into a you are the team that has no pressure, and Cleveland's got all of it in the world. Cleveland has been leading the American League Central for the majority of the year, and they are collapsing at the wrong time. They're now 22-28 in their last 50 games. Now, it's still a very good ball club. Everybody knows that. Stephen Vogt is the betting favorite, actually, over Matt Quatraro to win Manager of the Year from the American League. That bullpen is the best in baseball, and if you are trailing late, you're probably not beating Cleveland. However, the rotation has become a glaring problem for Cleveland. That lineup at times has become a glaring problem. There's a lot of guys that aren't hitting as well as they were back in April and back in May, and I think the same could be said about the Royals. They've suffered some regression. But Cleveland was so good early on that this regression was very much seen because Cleveland wasn't going to win 110, 115 games. Nobody in the American League Central was. And they're a very young roster. They're a very talented team. I like a lot of the players over in Cleveland, but there is no denying at this point they are running out of gas. Do they got a little bit left in the tank just to hold off Minnesota and Kansas City? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. The good thing for the Royals is they can make their own luck. If they take care of business, and I say that lightly because taking care of business is not just taking the series from Philadelphia. You got to go above and beyond just taking care of business. But if they beat Philadelphia this weekend and they take 2 of 3, will be very tough to do, even with the Phillies' struggles in the second half. They will go into Cleveland, assuming that they maybe they take only one from Texas, or let's say in this scenario, they take 2 of 3 from Texas at home. The Royals will be 2 games back with 4 to play in Cleveland. They would have an opportunity to really, take a chunk out of that deficit in the Central. They could help out Minnesota and they can help out themselves. They've got 7 more games against Cleveland and they trail by only 2 games. So the Royals are going to have their chance to surpass them. In a best case scenario, the Royals sweep Cleveland or sweep Philadelphia, which I just don't think is going to happen. But like I said, a perfect scenario, and Cleveland were to get swept, well, then Cleveland's trailing you going into that Guardians series in Cleveland. So there are some interesting possibilities. I think what would be, a realistic goal here is Cleveland losing the series against Texas at home and the Royals take 2 of 3. You're only back 1 game with 4 to play against the Guardians. That can be your time to strike. Now, it also matters what Minnesota does. And Minnesota, to me, is still the team that I believe wins this division because they've had one of the better records in baseball after April. And they've got a team that once they get healthier, they're going to be the hardest to beat down the stretch. I think the Royals match up better with Cleveland than they do against Minnesota. But this will be all displayed on the diamond. Like there is no, and ifs or buts about it. We can have predictions all the live long day and we can, break down matchups and favorable things at that. The Royals will have no excuses. That will be their chance. That will be their opportunity. If they go into Cleveland early next week, and take 1 of 4, they're not winning this division. They will be put back again about 3 or 4 games. And at that point, you're just trying to hang on to your wild card lead and you worry about the Central a little bit later on. I had said this last week that my focus was the wild card race because that's what I believe the Royals are going to get when it's all said and done. But now things have gotten interesting enough. And I believe I said this in that podcast episode of if it gets down to a game or 2, you can start putting your attention on let's win this division. Let's find a way to surpass Cleveland. Let's find a way to surpass Minnesota. And that was something I didn't think would be possible when the Royals were 9 games back, 10 games back. I mean, Cleveland has had a bad collapse. Now, they still hold a 2-game lead over both Minnesota and Kansas City, but it's undeniable at this point that they are running a little bit out of gas. And I think that there is a direct correlation to the starting rotation not being able to work deep into games and the bullpen being overworked. Now, they still have the best closer in baseball in Emmanuel Clase. They still have some great young arms out there that can bridge the gap to Clase. They've got tough arms still in their rotation, like a Tanner Beebe or a Bibee, excuse me. They've got guys you don't want to face, and I believe the Royals will face Bibee in Cleveland. Probably have to face him again in Kansas City. But still, it's a rotation that has had its issues. They don't work deep into games. They've had to use a couple of different guys. They went out and acquired Alex Cobb. They threw him in the rotation. Matthew Boyd had started the game against the Yankees. No, they're really trying to piece together that rotation and just win games with the strength of their bullpen, something the 2014 and the 2015 Royals were able to do. And that's why I think the Royals match up well. If you can pounce on that rotation early, which they did in a handful of the games they faced the Guardians this year, don't allow them to have an opportunity to have a 1 or 2 run lead late in the game. And if you can pounce on that rotation, well, then go into Cleveland's bullpen, the earlier the better. Get that bullpen worn down before game 3 or game 4 of that series. But that's what's going to be the exciting part about this. If the Royals can take some momentum into that Philadelphia series and take that momentum from that series and carry it into Cleveland, you've got your shot. You've got your shot at the quote-unquote king. Because with the Guardians being in first place, they are the king. And this is your best opportunity to strike. This is the chance. You got to take care of what you can take care of against the Phillies, and you got to have your fingers crossed that the Rangers can help you out a little bit. They've been helping you out by sending you good pitchers like Cole Reagans and Michael Lorenzen, but the Rangers need to go into Cleveland, beat the Guardians, maybe 2 of 3, can't get too greedy, and set up a 4-game series in which you can leapfrog Cleveland. Nobody would have thought that opportunity would still be possible come late August. Then after Cleveland, you got Houston. So just because you have that opportunity to leapfrog Cleveland, it does not mean you're in the clear. You'll have to see them again. You'll have to see Minnesota again. You'll have to see the Astros. You'll have to see the Yankees. You have to go to Pittsburgh and take on a Pirates team that can play well there. You got to see the Braves. You got to see the Giants. There's a lot of tough games on the schedule. But the Royals have their opportunity to strike a Cleveland team that at least appears right now to be on fumes. I still think it's a great team. It's the best bullpen in baseball. They have one of the best young managers in baseball, and the Royals don't play well in Cleveland. So the odds are stacked against you. And first things first, you got to take care of the Phillies in Kansas City, which we will dive into next. We'll take a quick break, come back, and look at those three matchups on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday between the Royals and the Phillies. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. A few things we want to say, starting with our thanks to you making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On MLB podcast. Host Pat Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, is here daily to provide national expertise with his trademark humor to help you get ready for the MLB playoffs here in the dog days of summer. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day on Locked On MLB. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We also want to give a shout out to SupplyHouse. And with SupplyHouse, you can get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. And I was there on Tuesday and Wednesday night at Kauffman Stadium. Not the biggest crowds in the world. That's been a little bit of a talking point, and we might touch on that after the series against Philadelphia so we can get a full grasp of what that week-long homestand looked like attendance-wise. But if you're thinking about going out to the Phillies series, it should be fantastic. Warm weather out there, so make sure you hydrate. And this should be a series in which the K is packed. You've got the first-place team coming over from the National League East, and your Royals are in a playoff push. They have a playoff spot. They are pushing for the American League Central. So go out and look at Game Time for tickets that you can buy going into this series. Friday should be awesome, Saturday as well, and Sunday. Like I said, warm weather, but take your friends out there, take your parents, take your kids, whatever you're thinking about, just go over to Game Time because they're going to have the best deals out there. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So as I said, the Phillies are going to be coming to Kansas City, and it's a Phillies team that has not played well in the second half. They had really gotten off to a hot start early on in the season, had almost run away with that division because of Atlanta's injuries, which they're still dealing with Acuna out for the year, Austin Riley down 6 to 8 weeks. You know, I think they've dealt with a barrage of injuries in the rotation, Spencer Strider being one, very, very early on. I want to say that was even before the regular season. Might have been in spring training when they had to shut down Spencer Strider. But the Phillies, they took advantage of a soft schedule. And that was maybe one of the criticisms going into, May and June was that Philadelphia was just beating up on bad teams. And now in the second half, not that they're incapable or too weak or anything like that to take on good teams because they're one of the most loaded teams in all of baseball. I mean, they've got superstars at numerous positions. When you talk about Bryce Harper and you talk about Trey Turner, you talk about Nick Castellanos, you talk about Schwarber. I know not all those guys are superstars. In fact, I would say that, Bryce Harper is really the only one, but Alec Boehm, making a name for himself this year in the All-Star game, in the Home Run Derby as well. Also a local guy here. If you're from the state of Kansas, he went to Wichita State. No, there are a number of guys out there the Royals pitchers are going to have to worry about facing. There's a lot of power, guys that can hit it well over the fountains at Kauffman Stadium and can do serious damage if you are not attacking them in the ways they're supposed to be attacked. You're not pinpointing their cold zones. You're leaving too many pitches and hittable areas. I mean, this all sounds very surface level, but it's true. It's a lineup that can do serious damage if you're not careful. And I think the Phillies look at the Royals in the exact same way. You can't just leave a hanger to Bobby Witt Jr., to Vinny Pasquantino, or to Salvador Perez, especially with runners in scoring position. For Philadelphia, guys like Michael Wacha, Brady Singer, and Seth Lugo, they can't just leave hangers to Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Castellanos and Schwarber and Alec Boehm. I mean, those guys right there, there's 5 guys right there in the order that are a significant upgrade over what you just saw in 3 games against the Los Angeles Angels. But it should be a lot of fun. I think you're getting the Phillies at the right time because they're not due for good baseball, but they're also not playing as well as they were at the beginning of the season. They're 500 in their last 10 games. They had won their series finale against Atlanta, who's still 7 games back of them in the division. I mean, they've completely run away with the National League East. But you look at the pitching matchups in this series, it's going to be Taijuan Walker, who's had a really rough year for Philadelphia, going up against Wacha on Friday night. And that's one, in my opinion, you have to take. I don't think you're going to feel good about this series at all if the Phillies tag Michael Wacha and the Royals are not able to do much off of Taijuan Walker, because Taijuan Walker has just not been good this year. He has been one of the guys that I feel like back in April and May was a talking point in Philadelphia because Spencer Turnbull was doing so good for the Phillies and Walker was struggling. I mean, this year, he's not been a strikeout pitcher at all. Only 51 strikeouts in 61 and 2/3 innings. His whip is over 1.5, so he's dealing with a little bit more base runners than the league average than you'll typically see from a good starter in the Phillies rotation, which, by the way, they have one of the best rotations in all of baseball. They're ahead of the Royals in quality starts by, I think, 1, if I'm not mistaken, although they have a game tonight, so we'll see how that start goes. But Taijuan Walker has been bad in his last 7. He wasn't very good last time out against Washington, wasn't very good against Miami, wasn't very good against Arizona, and he doesn't work deep into games. He went 4 innings against the Diamondbacks, 4 innings against the Marlins, and 4 2/3 against Washington. So he's somebody that you want to jump on early. That should be the upper hand for the Royals because of the way Michael Wacha has been throwing. And that's one to me that is the must take in that series. Not going to say must win, but if you are going to take 2 of 3, it all comes down to Friday where you got to jump out 1-0 and take a lot of pressure off game 2, which should be Ranger Suarez's return to the rotation. And he'll go up against Brady Singer. So I look at this Phillies lineup and who they're going to be playing. The good thing is that they're not just going to load up their lineup with lefties. They're going to want to put Trey Turner out there. They're going to want to put a guy like Alec Boehm out there. They're going to want to put Realmuto out there. And for the lefties in there, he's going to have to worry about Kyle Schwarber. He's going to have to worry about Harper. He's going to have to worry about Brandon Marsh. No, there are guys in that lineup, lefties, that could really punish Brady Singer if he has the control and the lack of trust in his stuff that he had against Minnesota when he got roughed up on that Monday game a couple of weeks back. But it should be Ranger Suarez going up against a righty-heavy Royals lineup. That would be my best guess at that. And then on Sunday, this was interesting to me. It was supposed to be Zach Wheeler, or at least he was due to start in that series finale against Seth Lugo. We know Seth Lugo is going to be the series finale guy for the Royals against Philadelphia before they head to Cleveland for their 4-game series. But this came from Matt Gelb, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's the Phillies beat writer for The Athletic. He tweeted this out a couple of hours ago that the Phillies have Taijuan Walker and Ranger Suarez starting the first 2 games this weekend in Kansas City. And it's possible they go with a spot starter or a bullpen game on Sunday. The team believes an extra day for everyone in the rotation could be beneficial right now. So there's a bullet dodge for the Royals if they can get a spot starter or a bullpen game instead of Zach Wheeler, one of the top arms in the National League. So that could have just been a gift from the baseball gods that Philly is looking at this series with maybe less urgency than the Royals are. The Royals want to continue to pad that wild card lead and also gain ground in the Central before that 4-game series in Cleveland. So it'll be Michael Wacha and Taijuan Walker on Friday night, first pitch 7:10. It'll be Brady Singer going up against Ranger Suarez on Saturday. First pitch in that game will be at 6:10, so just an hour earlier. And then on Sunday, Seth Lugo against likely either a spot starter or a bullpen game from Philadelphia. First pitch for that game will be at 1:10 p.m. Central Time at Kauffman Stadium. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter X at JohnnyJ_15. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. Now go check out Locked On MLB Podcast. Prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully, who has it all covered every single day. You can find the link to Locked On MLB in the description, so you don't need to search it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tomorrow, it's going to be a Mailbag Friday, so get your questions ready, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.